We live literally in a rain shower of chemicals that we apply to our skin, our scalp, inhale, ingest. Today, we are birthing children in this country with upwards of 300 chemicals already in their system when they pop out of mom. Pre-polluted kids. Today, kids as young as 8, 10, 12 have adult onset diabetes. How is that possible? It's the environment we live in, the stresses we're under, the food we eat. There's simple things you can do to improve your life, and taking care of your gut is number one.
Thanks for tuning into the Vibrant Soul Society, The Conversations. I'm your host, Baba Sam, the Miracle Man. Today, we have a bright, vibrant soul with us. Dave, welcome to The Conversations.
Well, thanks for having me, Baba. This is a real treat.
So for people that aren't familiar with you, who is Dave?
So Dave, I run a podcast called The Brain-Gut Connection, where we talk about brain-gut issues. It stems from my own personal story. My story starts when I was 4. I had an abusive alcoholic stepdad enter my life. He was there for 9 years. At the age of 14, my subconscious was formed, and I was released into the world with a very defeatist attitude. I was going nowhere fast. At the age of 17, I stood 6 foot. I weighed 135. I joined the Marine Corps. I came out 3 months later, weighing 165. If you know anything about Marine Corps boot camp, you don't gain weight, you lose it. Turns out I was malnourished. I learned that when 2 years into my enlistment, the wheels came off, literally. I was out for a run. I would try to run 5 at lunch, 5 at dinner, and not every day, but that was my go-to. And I was out for a run on a Sunday and my left leg just shut down on me. This is back in 75, 79, so I'm dating myself a bit. Way before they had running shoes. We ran in combat boots or Chuck Taylors. I was flat-footed because of that, plus the growth. At this point in time, I was weighing 225. I developed something called biocompartment of the tibia. They had performed on me bilateral fasciotomies. That's where they opened up the shin muscle on each side of your leg, like a sausage on a hot grill. I've got the strangest looking shins you ever want to see. Into my running career. So I had 2 years left of the service. They allowed me to stay in and complete my enlistment, but I couldn't run anymore. So I had to stay in shape, and I discovered weightlifting. The one piece of equipment that wasn't being used was the squat rack. Everything else was being used at lunchtime. So I started to squat. 2 years later, I came out of the service. I was weighing about 245, and I had a very well-developed lower body and no upper body. I was the exact opposite of what you see in the gym today. Let me back up. I started college as a nutrition minor. That lasted for a short period until I met the dean of the nutrition school. She was grossly overweight, that she snorted when she walked. And I made a decision that she could not teach me what I wanted to learn because I was looking to become a bodybuilder. And her body was not the type that I wanted to build. So I dropped the minor, continued to educate myself. Fast forward to when I turned 50, which was 17 years ago, I stood 6'2". I was weighing 320. I was capable of benching 450, squatting 650, deadlifting 650. Very strong, very large, very muscular. Went in for my 50th birthday checkup, and I was diagnosed type 2 diabetic. Type 2 diabetes is not what big people get. If you're overweight, yes, but not muscular. Made no sense. So I started going down rabbit holes. I discovered this thing called the internet, and I started Googling, and the first thing that popped up was the Paleo diet. And it just makes sense to eat the way our ancestors, the way we evolved to eat, right? Prior to all this processed foods, etc., we ate a certain way. All the animals we ate, all the protein we consumed was natural. It wasn't farmed, and there was no processed foods. A year later, I went back into my doctor's office, and my blood sugar was normal. He was amazed, but he never asked me once what I did. Had a room full of people out in the waiting room who could use the advice, but he didn't care. He was making money on his scripts. But I still wasn't healthy. So I went down another rabbit hole, and I discovered what I call the chemical rain shower. We live literally in a rain shower of chemicals that we apply to our skin, our scalp, inhale, ingest. It's there, and all chemicals are hormone disruptors. Today, we are birthing children in this country with upwards of 300 chemicals already in their system when they pop out of mom. Pre-polluted kids. And we wonder why kids have problems we're having today with kids, right? By behavioral issues, health issues at young ages, it makes no sense. But even though today I use essential oils for everything, my environment is totally clean, I still had problems. So I went back to the internet and I discovered something called ACEs. Now, I'm not referring to the playing cards. I'm referring to adverse childhood experiences. This is a short 10-question yes or no answer test. If you score one yes, you have an elevated chance of having a late-term life health issue. Heart disease, cancer, diabetes, the list goes on. I scored 8. What we determined with my naturopath doctors was that I've lived in fight or flight, the stress response, fight or flight, because of my childhood. It started when I was 4, terrified all the time, always having this hormone dump in my system. So it burned out my adrenals. I've done a lot of work on myself these last 17 years. I still have a tendency to follow the amygdala, the survival mechanism. When something goes wrong, a noise, someone yells at me, I don't fear the boss anymore because I work for myself. But I still have a tendency to start to go down this road and I pull myself back. What nobody ever talks about is rest and digest. There's 2 stress responses, sympathetic and parasympathetic. The fight or flight is what we all live in because of our modern lifestyle. Rest and digest is really where we should live. We want to enter stress. We want to be stressed because that builds the immune system. It builds character, right? It keeps us healthy. But we want to then leave that and come back to rest and digest. There's a great book by Sapolsky titled Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And it's a great book on how to deal with stress, which is really what's killing us. So in a nutshell, Baba, that is my story.
There's a lot to unpack, really
Yeah.
lots to unpack. So a few things I was really curious that we're being exposed to 300 chemicals. Have they shown that increase over time or how did that come to be?
As part of my journey, I also started farming. I had a 75-acre parcel. The economy took a dump back in the subprime mess, and I had to find a way to make this piece of property profitable. So I went down a number of rabbit holes. The first was an aquaponics venture. I set up a 1-year-long project, proof of concept. I had 2,400 gallons of water inside an enclosed, heated and cooled building, and I raised yellow perch. We put up an indoor grow bed to pump the fish water into the grow bed to raise vegetables. However, it was inside, you need lights. Lights are expensive, so we shut that down. The grow bed part down, we kept the fish going until we were about ready to go from 2,400 gallons to 20,000 gallons when we discovered that the commercial feed that we were feeding yellow perch, same thing that salmon farmers and trout farmers feed, they're all carnivores, is 100% grain. When's the last time you're in a lake and saw a salmon, trout, or yellow perch chewing on a corn cob? Not a natural diet. And it goes back to our own diet, right? We eat an unnatural diet. So I apologize. I kind of got off track. Your question was about
All these 300 chemicals that you say we're exposed to. Has that shown an increase over time? I'm really curious about that
Yes.
journey.
Got it back to the 70s. In the 40s, 45s, 50s, 60s, our farming practices were pretty much the way they'd been for a long time. You planted your corn crop so many inches apart, so many feet apart, because you had to drive tractors down them. Today, I think it's 5 inches between stalks. You drive these massive vehicles that spray Roundup down the corn crops. Since the 70s, we've seen an increase in chemicals being dumped on the ground because our ground has been robbed, all the nutrients have been taken out. Even though they do this corn soybean rotation, which corn replaces the nutrients soybeans needs, it's not a natural environment. So you got to pump millions and millions of tons of chemicals, which run off into our water. And this is all since the 70s. Roundup has come around since the 70s, and we spray, tons of that stuff.
Exactly, because that's why I heard that lately with the farming is so nutrient deficient. They're recommending everyone take a multivitamin now because there's no nutrition in our food.
I grew up in southwestern Kansas as a kid, standing out in the middle of a field, and it was all 4 corners of the compass was wheat. You'd have these big, massive diesel engines sitting in the field, pumping water out of the Ogallala Reservoir, which is this massive underground reservoir of water to irrigate the crops. Today, I go back to my hometown. There's no wheat. There's no pumps in the field. My cousin who still lives there says a farmer drills down 2 miles deep into the earth. His well will pump water for maybe a week before it starts bubbling. The reservoir is empty. Now, we can refill it. It'll take 6,000 years to do so. What was the breadbasket of the nation isn't so much anymore. There's no water. So they raise cattle now in southwestern Kansas. The cattle are fed, for the most part, GMO grain, which destroys the rumen. This is another topic we could go into in depth, how sick the animals are that we eat. We don't eat healthy animals. We eat animals that are near death. And that's the meat that most consumers consume. It's what you eat, what you drink, what you put on your hair. Chemicals are everywhere.
Yeah, that's really a really eye-opener for people to go discover your food and see what are you consuming and what's going on with that. Because as you know, this is all interrelated. If we don't have healthy food, how can we be healthy? It all comes back to that.
Yeah, and in the organic protocol, what you learn, as I discovered, was it's only organic in name. So if you're buying organic honey, you can stop because there is no such thing as organic honey. The reason is you cannot train a bee to stay out of a GMO sprayed field. A Roundup ready field, they travel, if I remember right, 7 miles out, 7 miles back, 14-mile radius, something like that. And they're going to cross all kinds of fields, organic as well as GMO sprayed. They're going to bring back both into their hive. So you can't separate the two. Organic honey doesn't exist. Again, I'm a child of the 60s and 70s. Back when they had health food stores, you'd go in and your apples were all worm eaten, right? You had wormholes. Might be surprised when you bite into it, what might be left wiggling. Today, the organic apples are bigger, shinier, juicier than the non-organic apples. How is that possible? Where's the wormholes? It's because they spray pesticides. The organic protocol allows pesticides to be sprayed on our crops, organic crops. So again, you need to learn what you're eating.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So another point I want to get back to that. I don't think most people realize this adverse childhood experience test. Most people aren't really aware of how their childhood is really having a huge impact on them. So you could talk to me a little more about the test and what that reveals and what we can learn for those kind of results.
Yeah, so it's basically 10 questions of the levels of trauma that you experienced. Were you abused mentally, physically, or sexually? Did a family member serve time in prison? Did you see someone get beat, right? Your mom, your dad getting beat by your mom, right? If you witnessed any of those activities, then you're traumatized. And trauma, as we now know, isn't just about our life. There's something now called generational trauma, where the trauma that your parents, your grandparents, I'm not sure how many generations back it goes because of this science called epigenetics. Our DNA is tagged, and that tag is there's environmental conditions, stress, chemicals, right, that will trigger a tag on our DNA. And when it triggers, it may express or not express something. We have this huge ramp up of all these late-term life issues, cancer, and they're becoming it's younger and younger, right? When I was a kid growing up, you had adult onset diabetes when you're older in life. Today, kids as young as 8, 10, 12 have adult onset diabetes. How is that possible? It's the environment we live in, the stresses we're under, the food we eat, etc.
And plus, that gets back to with this generational, is like, what did your mom experience when she was in the womb? Because that is impacting you.
Another thing we're unaware of is when babies are born, what kind of microbiome are they given? There's 2 microbiomes a baby receives. One is the external microbiome, because there are bugs on our skin that keep our skin healthy. That's delivered when the child moves through the birth canal. In cesarean birth, the child doesn't get the external biome. They have to produce that over time. That's why kids have skin issues, because if you're cesarean born, you're going to have most likely have problems. The second is nursing. Does mom have a healthy microbiome of her own. When she nurses the child is given a complete microbiome of their own that they can then grow because they come out empty. If mom doesn't have a healthy microbiome, then kids have health issues. SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth, candida, overabundance of sugar in our diet, and a number of other what's called autoimmune issues. The autoimmune issues is something new in medical science. They've not been around for very long, and it used to be just a few were identified. And then all of a sudden, there's like 180 plus, closing on 200 different autoimmune issues that have now been identified by science. And this all relates back to our gut health.
So I had a lot of autoimmune issues myself, but I didn't really tie it back to my gut health. I related more to my mental state of being really hard and critical of myself, and that poisoning my inner environment. But I'm sure there was a lot of external factors as well that I wasn't even aware of. Like, I didn't realize that I was a cesarean birth. So who knows how that contributed to my overall being.
And your mom, was she healthy when you were born?
She was healthy.
What's defined as healthy though, right? I mean, that's a rhetorical question. I thought my mom was healthy. I didn't suffer any issues other than being malnourished. We were poor, so I was malnourished. One thing that people don't understand is identify 3 brains in the body. Brain number 1 is between our ears. Brain number 2 is this mass of neurons called the heart. Brain number 3 is our gut. Serotonin, for a long time, was a brain chemical. The brain produced the serotonin. Today, we know it does, but the real winner of serotonin production is your gut. So if your gut's unhealthy, it's not producing the serotonin that would feed the brain. And then to tie all this together, there's something called the vagus nerve, which is the communication line between the 3 brains. They all need to be healthy, functioning for us to live our best life.
The last thing you were talking about in the beginning was this rest and digest. Can you get a little more into what this rest and digest is that you're talking about?
Sapolsky, he used the analogy of a zebra. A zebra's out on the plains, focused on the blade of grass. That's all in their ears. That's all. The only thing between their ears is that blade. Eat. They got to eat. They got to survive, right? But they're alert. He'll pick his head up. He'll look around because he knows there's a stressor out there somewhere. There's danger. But he's focused on the blade of grass until the lion jumps up out of the grass and charges. The zebra most likely will jump into fight or flight, which causes this massive hormone dump where they move from rest and digest, which means your body's functioning a certain way, into fight or flight, which means a lot of stuff gets shut down. Other things open up, your airwaves open up, your blood vessels open up, and this hormone dump, so you can immediately respond, right? Dopamine, there's a whole list of them, cortisol, to get that zebra away from the stressor. Once he's escaped the stressor, he goes through something called trauma release. But we've all gone through trauma release. When you've gotten so traumatized that you start shaking and you're crying, and being bullied at school, getting beat up, you come home, you start to shake, you cry, your mom comforts you, and then things go away. And that's moving from the stress response into the rest and digest response. The zebra runs away, goes through trauma release, and what's he do? He goes back focused on the blade of grass. What just happened doesn't have a thought, doesn't give a care about. He knows there's danger out there, and he's alert to it, and he's ready to move, but he's not stressing. We, on the other hand, get up in the morning, didn't sleep well, right, which causes stress. Our dreams, our thoughts at night were stressful. That causes stress. We don't eat right. That causes stress. We get in the car, we drive down the street, we get on the highway, somebody cuts us off. We start screaming obscenities. That's stress. We get to work, we're concerned because the boss is angry and yelling. That causes stress. We get a phone call from school, our kids are acting up or something needs to happen. Your parents call you, dad's not doing well. That causes stress. So we go through a whole day in a stress-filled environment. When do we get out of that into rest and digest? For most people, you don't. I used to work out. That was me moving out of a stress response into a rest and digest. But I was still stressing myself because working out's a stressful physical condition.
Now you've taken all of your knowledge from the years and now you're helping people with gut health. Is that from your own personal experience? You had type 2 diabetes, even though you thought you were doing things right, and you kept going down these rabbit holes. It's like, oh, what's this discovery? What's this discovery? So now you pulled everything together?
Yeah. When I learned through my own investigation about my own health, the animals I was looking to raise, I did for a number of years before I was forced to leave the farm. I did all the things wrong with my kids. And then when I learned all this stuff, the kids rebelled when we went paleo, they rebelled. My daughter still struggles with health issues that could be resolved if she cut certain things out of her diet. Our son was 15, disengaged with school. He checked out. We put him in therapy. Thankfully, my now ex-wife was between jobs. She had the time. She said, we're not putting him on drugs. We're going to find an answer to this. Ended up taking him to a naturopath and doing a gluten sensitivity test on him, do the food sensitivity test. And he came back gluten sensitive. And he was the king of gluten. So, Neil, you can't eat that stuff anymore. It's poison. And literally, he transformed like a light switch went on. He was disengaged to being very engaged. I go back to the Christmas before. He was downstairs. Everybody's upstairs. He's watching movies by himself. Doesn't want to engage. A year later, he's leading the charge. He's upstairs. He's the center of the room. He's yakking. He can't shut up. All because of taking gluten out of his diet. There's simple things you can do to improve your life, to improve your health. And taking care of your gut is number one.
Right. That, like you said, it's part of the three brains. It was really a big thing to me when I learned most of turn is in our gut. And what are we doing to nurture and honor that?
Hippocrates lived, I think, 500 BC. So we're talking 2,500 years ago. And we just now are agreeing that everything starts in the gut, right? Father of modern medicine. And he would be astounded of how much chemicals have entered into our medical practices, when he was a firm believer that let food be thy medicine, medicine be thy food. You can hear yourself by what you eat or what you don't eat.
There's just so much wisdom from the past that we haven't incorporated, like all of the Eastern traditions to get rid of stress, like meditation, yoga, and all these practices.
We have our own issues. Anglo-Saxons, another area of research. If you want to go down that rabbit hole, we're the conquerors, right? Everybody else is wrong. I think we're seeing it today. In politics, it boggled my mind that we don't seem to have critical thinking because we're not willing to research on our own. You listen to somebody who says something that you can resonate with, and that's the person you follow. You don't bother to listen to the opposing viewpoint. And I'm a big believer that we need to have on all areas of our life, right? Be listening to both the good and the bad. You make the determination by researching deeper into who's good and who's bad, but we don't do that.
Once again, it's back to the ancient wisdom. Stoicism was like, the words that you're hearing out there, are they your truth? And really digging more into this. And so it's like you constantly went down these rabbit holes. Oh, what's going on down here? Curiosity is missing today.
Yeah, I'm a sponge. I always have been. When I discovered the internet, holy moly, right? You can ask a question and get all kinds of responses back. My nephew had put a paleo diet in front of me 6 months before I was diagnosed diabetic. I came home that afternoon, sat down in front of the computer, typed in paleo diet. The first link that popped up, I read, and it was on a aha moment. Why did we ever leave the evolutionary path that we were put on from a diet perspective? People are trying to reclaim it, but even the attempts, right? You have the keto diet, the paleo diet, the carnivore diet, the vegetarian diet, the vegan diet, the omnivore diet, all these different diets. Just eat the way God. Look at the seasons. When the seasons come up, spring, you have a certain amount of fresh produce out there. Like a cow, you graze, right? In summer, you have a different set of produce, the plant life that you can eat. Just graze. Along the way, you find some animal protein because animal protein is the only protein that's complete. We need, people don't understand how the chemical plant works. The thing that fuels us, builds us, that replaces everything are all proteins. There's 22, 24 amino acids out there, but they create multitudes of proteins that are used to recover, to build, heal the wounds, etc., all through proteins. And we need animal protein is the best source of protein we can get. So a little bit of animal protein, a lot of green leafy vegetables, limit yourself on fruit intake. Don't drink juices. That's all sugar. If you drink the pulp, that's better, but it's a big dose of sugar. If you look at, again, how we evolved, you would find a berry bush and would eat in season, you'd eat all the berries. If it wasn't in season, you wouldn't eat any. And that's where you sit there, as long as the berries didn't come up and push you away, you'd eat as many berries as you could, right? An apple tree, but you didn't find these huge fields. You'd find one or two, right? As you went along. Sugar, you mentioned sugar earlier, anywhere between 75 to 150 pounds of sugar a year is what we Americans consume. Ancient man, if he was lucky, would get 5 pounds of honey. And that required some effort because bees sting, right? So, yeah, it's interesting how we've lost our way in so many ways.
And all the wisdom has been there, but we're in this conqueror mode that we know what's best for us. And we're always in this fight mode as well. We know the conquer, to fight, to battle. That keeps us stressed.
Yeah. And that leads to not only problems for us, but for the generations to follow. I wasn't aware of all this stuff until I got my diagnosis. And that forced me, because I thought I was healthy. I thought I was a picture perfect. You would not have called me fat. I had some excess weight on me, 60-inch chest, 42-inch waist. You would not have called me fat. Nobody, at least in my face, would have called me fat. I was capable of parting the Red Sea. I'd walk through a crowd and people would scatter. Everybody wanted to know if I played football or was a WWE wrestler. I got that a few times. Hey, are you this wrestler? No, I'm just a guy walking through life. I was too large for my size. I'm small boned and I was carrying way too much muscle mass. My chiropractor kept telling me, you need to lose some muscle mass, because I couldn't move properly. I wasn't focused on moving. I was focused on benching, squatting, and deadlifting. I didn't care about shooting baskets. I didn't care about throwing a ball. I was just focused on lifting. Today, I am much healthier than I was. I contribute it to my diet. The fact I don't take any medications. I take natural supplements. I have stumbled upon something which I'm only in week 3 with this, and I've already seen some phenomenal results. I won't go deep into this, but if anybody who's listening wants to pursue it, I'll be happy to have a conversation with them. And it's interesting technology that there's no drugs involved, but I've already gotten, my shirts are fitting tighter. My arms are bigger. My weights are coming up. My pain isn't there like it used to be. The biggest change is when I stand in the shower and I shower, soap my head up, close your eyes and rinse off. I would have to steady myself because my balance is starting to go. I'm 67. Put my hands on the wall, steady myself, rinse off, and then I'm good. Open my eyes back up. The last 3 days, I've taken 1 or 2 showers a day because of the gym and stuff. I've closed my eyes and I'm a rock. I'm steady. I'm not waving back and forth. I contribute this technology as being the big change for me.
I always see people that look at you and say, there's no way he's 67.
Yeah. That's a lot of makeup, you know. Yeah. I get hit on by 18-year-olds, which is pisses my girlfriend off, pisses my friends off. Why are they interested in you? But this is a family show. We won't go down that road.
It's because you're taking care of yourself. You're doing all the things right. All the rabbit holes led you into a certain way of being.
Yeah, I joke that I pickle myself because I lived in the bottom of the bottle for a number of years. Given the start I had in my life, I basically was living into, I'm a worthless piece of crap. That's what my stepdad told me. He's the adult in the room. He therefore must know what he's talking about. I spent a lot of years living into that I was a worthless piece, treated people horribly. And then one day, fortunately, I'd gotten married. Someone took me under the wing, and then we had kids. When the kids started popping out, my life changed because I wasn't going to continue what I was doing. I wasn't continuing that life. I changed that life. All this time I was lifting, always physically active, but mentally I was washed up. It started in 10th grade. My algebra teacher put a book in front of me called Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. If you've not read it, you should. I came out of boot camp with 3 goals. One was to be a soldier, Marine for 4 years. The next was to be a bodybuilder. I was on Mr. Ann Arbor, 82. I didn't win. I placed last. I was a white guy with no tan, so I washed out. Biggest guy on stage, drug-free, but I washed out. You couldn't see the muscles. You could see he's a big guy, but you couldn't see the muscles. I blame myself. My coach, you needed to get a tan. Anyway, and then last was to cross a 7-figure net worth. And I did that in 35. I started off with a freaking attitude and then created one that was more positive, focused. And again, today, knock on wood, I'm in the best shape of my life.
You can just tell by looking at you that this is a healthy person.
Thanks for that, Baba. I appreciate that. As I've gotten older, I never really thought about it. And then when you start having people around you falling over younger than you, that starts kind of a wake-up call. We all have the time we have, and I need to do a better job of getting the word out, my message, that, there's a better way. You don't need to live the life, eat the food, change the mindset, get out of the chemical rain shower, deal with the stress, and you too can be Dave.
Yeah, as we're wrapping up here in the conversation, is there any last nuggets that you would impart on the audience that is listening here today that we haven't covered today?
Yeah, it's really a simple process. You got to change your mindset. We're all given a crap mindset for the most part. Unless you take a cognizant effort to change that mindset, you're always going to struggle. Second is eat clean, right? Everybody talks about eating clean. Learn what that means and then follow a lifestyle, regardless of which one you pick, as long as it's not vegetarian or vegan. That's not a natural diet. That's an unnatural diet. Because you don't eat animal protein. Some you do, but you need to eat animal protein. And then, so mindset, diet, be physically active, and learn how to de-stress, move into rest and digest and relax.
De-stress is so important. So Dave, how would people reach out to you?
So you can reach out to me. My website's davebrethauer.com, D-A-V-E, Brethauer, spelled B as in boy, R-E-T-H-A-U-E-R.com. Love to chat with you. If I can help you in any way, shape, or form, I stand ready.
Thanks again for your time. I really appreciate having you on, Dave.
Thank you. Appreciate you.